Lived a fairy tale life from the very beginning.
Right down to the white picket fence.
But in 2008, that's when it all hit the fan.
People that aren't unemployed tell you, I know how you feel. You're working. You don't know how I feel.
I will thank God every morning for that next job.
That tells you something about the economy. When we're that busy, it's never good.
It's like you look around, we don't seem like people who are in foreclosure.
But we work really hard at not letting all the stress drown us.
I'm broke. I'm bankrupt. I'm done.
The American dream is gone.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. As we reported earlier, the Federal Labor Department announced today that in June, far fewer jobs than expected were created, while the unemployment rate remains unchanged at 8.2% nationally. That news offered little hope to the more than 13 million Americans who are without a job. My next guest is the director of a new documentary that puts a face on a few of those unemployed, some Long Island residents who once had good jobs but now find themselves with few options, fading hopes, facing bankruptcy, foreclosure, and worse. Here to discuss his new film, Hard Times, Lost in Long Island, which will premiere on HBO next week, is award-winning filmmaker Marc Levin. Welcome to the program. Good to see you.
Hey, great to be here.
I knew you from this documentary on Newark you did called Brick City, and this in its own way was just as bleak as some of that inner city story that you were telling.
It's true. I mean, it's interesting because I was working on Brick City and started this at the same time. And although from the exterior, the contrast couldn't be greater than the kind of the mean streets of some of Newark's tough neighborhoods and the beautiful suburban lawns and homes in Mid-Island. The kind of psychic desperation and the sense of hopelessness, you're right, there's a real parallel there. And I think that was the focus of this story, is that sometimes we accept the kind of popular characterization of the long-term unemployed as being just in the inner city or being minority or being in the Rust Belt, you know, our industrial heartland. This economic crisis has brought it home to the very heart of the suburban dream.
Yeah, no, it was startling. The four families, they include a chiropractor, a school teacher, a Wall Street guy, a couple of business people. I mean, all white collar, all did pretty much the right thing. And you couldn't really tell from exteriors. And I'm wondering, how did you find these folks?
Well, you first went to some of the social service groups and charities, Catholic charities, some of the food banks, the unemployment center and job reference centers, but really where we found the most connections was in diners, which are a motif in the film. It turned out that support groups and networking groups of long-term unemployed people were gathering in diners because they don't go to the unemployment office anymore because you do it all by the web.
Well, you said they've closed down those offices.
Right, and you do everything by the web. It's at diners where for a cup of coffee you can go online, they have Wi-Fi, and the proprietors were very supportive. So interestingly enough, it was in these support groups that we found most of our people.
Yeah, and that's where you got a lot of really great footage. Let's look at a sample from Hard Times, Lost in Long Island.
So we put our house on the market. It's our only asset. It's all we've got. But our property taxes are very high, and we have no money to retire on. Right. So we just have to work forever. But we can't get jobs. So it's kind of a visual. So it's very difficult to figure out. But we all did what we were supposed to do.
Right.
And this has been the result for us.
Even in cases when they've been unemployed for a year or more, and they're smart enough and articulate enough to understand what happened in the economy, but they all seem so shell-shocked, even now.
I think that is the appropriate term, shell-shocked. It's like a slow-motion disaster film. Instead, like Katrina or an earthquake, you know, it happens, your life's upended, but you see it all right there. This happens in slow motion, and you keep holding on that no, it can't be real. And even seeing the president today and Romney, you know, speaking about the job figures, you know, I thought about what she just said. We all did what we were supposed to be. This wasn't supposed to happen to us, you know. So to kind of reconfigure what went wrong. And I guess one of the surprising things is how many people do blame themselves, you know, that they internalize this, that there must be something wrong with me, there's shame. We found instances where certain characters didn't tell their family members. In fact, when one of the couples had their 2 sons come to see the film, the premiere of the film, their sons were shocked because they didn't know their mom had been going to a food bank to get food for them.
Wow. Yeah, well, that was one of the telling scenes, in fact, going into the food bank, and also just sitting on the front steps. I mean, this is what I found so captivating, is that, visually, it could be any guy. He's sitting there, maybe he's waiting for his wife, maybe he's in construction and it's his day off. Unless you sat and talked with the guy, you wouldn't know that he lost his job on Wall Street. He's been sitting there for a year, hasn't paid his mortgage for a year, and sooner or later he's going to get thrown out on the street.
It's sometimes, I don't know if you remember that film Blue Velvet.
Oh, sure.
But, under the beautiful exterior, there's kind of something malevolent happening. And in this case, I think inside these nice homes, you see the cars, the neighborhoods, it's almost like these people are being disappeared. That's, you hear the statistics today, but the human story, what's heartbreaking to me is that so many of these people have something to contribute. They have skills, they have experience, they have wisdom, and yet we have no place for them.
Well, there's that whole sort of frustration they all encounter when they're told that after years of being a white-collar business professional, they can't even get a job at Whole Foods or at Home Depot because they're quote-unquote overqualified.
Overqualified.
Which I've heard that for years. I still don't know what that means.
Well, I think, in the job market, it means that, they're afraid of hiring somebody that has, much more skills because they feel once they get a better offer, they're going to leave the job. So even if it's a menial job working in a diner or driving a FedEx truck, they're afraid they're never going to hold them and develop them, there. One of the characters says, he's got 2 master's degrees, and he said, I should have been a plumber.
Yeah, well, look, I tell my nephews that all the time. Get yourself a trade, because I pay out way more to those people than I think they pay to subscribe to this cable station. Let me ask you this, though, in our last minute. Where do you think things are heading? Do you think the political leadership understands what's going on in these communities the way you've documented?
Well, that's a good question. With Obama, you would hope so, because he was a community organizer. With Romney, I really honestly don't know. Sometimes I see him on his jet ski and his wife, and they seem to be in another world. But whether they're in touch or not, or they read about it or hear about it or meet people, I think we are experiencing a political paralysis in terms of facing up to that something fundamental has changed in the way our global economy works. And can it give jobs and a standard of living that we've all become used to? Can it support a middle class? And that is a huge, huge issue that will be in the center of this election. But whether it's honestly discussed and debated, that remains to be seen.
And of course, not to spoil it for anybody, but one of the guys finally does get a job.
That's right.
And what's he doing? He's training people in India.
Well, he will be going. It's an Indian company on Long Island, and he will be going to India, yes, at some point, training people.
Amazing. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. A great film. I wish you great success with it, and I think everybody should watch it. I'm going to watch it again. Hard Times, Lost in Long Island premieres on Monday, July 9th on HBO at 9 p.m. You can learn about other air dates by going to HBO.com. We're going to take a break right now. Still to come, we'll look back at when the city lost its fight to host the 2012 Olympics. Later on, we'll discuss the uproar over the Board of Elections and the still undecided congressional primary race between Charles Rangel and Adriano Espaillat when I'm joined by the 4 members of our Friday Reporters Roundtable. We're back in a minute.